For the whip around this week, we got 10 games that we threw on the whip around. What's the first one we'll talk about? We'll talk about Kentucky Louisville. This was an awesome game. This is a rivalry game.
For a lot
And
of
right
reasons.
after, for a lot of reasons, and the
Yeah.
intensity around the Kentucky program amplified after this game because the rumors that Mark Stoops was going to be the head coach of Texas A&M. I was in full belief that the next coach of Texas A&M was going to be Mark Stoops for about an hour and a half, if that. So, uh, this was a good game by Kentucky. Devin Leary again had one of those games where like he just had a good game, which happened a few times this year. And look, Louisville got caught lacking. So now their playoff chances, as slim as they were before, they're dead. They're still playing in the ACC championship, so they still have a lot to play for. And Jeff Brom, this is a fantastic season for him. 10-2, you will take that every single day of the week as a Louisville fan, Jeff Brom, with this schedule. You hate losing to a rival, but I don't know. Are there any other takeaways from this game?
Yeah, I think that's just what you get with Jeff Brom sometimes, where you don't play perfect football and the other team plays well and you can get got. I mean, they had a chance to win the football game. They got outscored by 10 points in the fourth quarter and they lost at home to the rival. Now, obviously, like 10-2 is still a wildly successful season. And obviously, you have a real chance of beating, Tate Rutledge and Florida State next week. But regardless of what happens in that game, even so, 10-3, a top probably 25, 20-ish finish is going to be really successful in year one of Louisville, right? You hit on some transfers. Jamar Thresh, Jack Plummer played well enough to win you a lot of football games. I thought he was fine. He made one bad interception. And obviously they had the two fumbles. And so you lose the turnover margin, you some penalties, and like that's how you can lose these games. Like it is what it is. You get to go in the bad with Jeff Brom, but it's also like year one of Louisville. Like eventually he will get enough talent in there where when Kentucky's on their down year, you can beat them at home with your B minus game, with your C plus game, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But obviously, yeah, like that Mark Stoops news is wild. I think if you're a Kentucky fan, like Texas A&M was outraged that they had Mark Stoops. To be honest, I thought that was a good hire. I think he's a real good coach. I don't think there's a huge difference between Mark Stoops and Mike Elko, other than familiarity with the program, other than you probably know what you're getting with the person Mike Elko versus the coach in Mark Stoops a little bit more. Obviously, we'll get into that more, but yeah, I just
I
think I
I
think
I
Mark
think
Stoops is a
there's
great hire.
there's
But for
quite a
Kentucky
few
though, Kentucky
differences.
fans, you got to be happy with Mark Stoops. Kentucky, like people talk about fit all the time, and like any coach can fit anywhere if they're winning, But like Mark Stoops is fitting really well at Kentucky. He understands the expectation there. They understand the expectation there. He is giving everything he needs to succeed at the level, at the standard that they want them to succeed, and he's doing it. And you have
I
to be
agree.
happy with that.
I agree.
And
Mark
and
Stoops is a
honestly,
great coach.
I don't know many Kentucky fans that are like upset with Mark Stoops. I get it. Like if you're upset with the O line performance the last, I don't know, 3 years, that's something to think about. But like by and large, Kentucky has been a very relevant program the last 5, 6 years, and that's not been the thing for them.
Yeah, I agree. Mark Stoops is a good coach. So is Jeff Brom. Kentucky got it done today. That was a good top 10 win for them. I mean, top 10, right? I mean, Louisville is definitely not power rated as a top 10 team, but it was a good win on the road against a rival. You'll take it every time. 7-5
Yeah.
against a top, and with a win against a top 10 team on the road, which, by the way, I guess Texas A&M has not beaten a team on the road in their last 10 games. So Mark Stoops is already doing something a little better than A&M is.
He already did that.
But yeah, this was a good game. I enjoyed it. Next game we'll talk about Alabama Auburn. Holy cow. Did
What?
Peyton Thorne play unbelievably average, which is not normal for these Iron Bowl games when you have Auburn. Normally you have like exceedingly spectacular quarterback play in order for Auburn to win these games in Jordan-Hare. Jalen Monroe, I thought played fine. He played fine.
I mean, he made some boneheaded plays, which he always does. I mean, every game you're going to get 2 to 3. And we talked about this when we were watching the Minnesota game with Kelly McManus, right? Like minimize the boneheaded plays as long as like if the bad pass falls incomplete or something happens, like, and you can like still recover from it, then that's fine. With Monroe, he had a couple plays where like he literally ran across the line of scrimmage and threw the ball at least 2 yards downfield. That cannot happen, right? If you want to beat Georgia, but also like they still got a field goal on that drive, and then secondly, like, well, you saw what happened at the 4th and 31. If you haven't, I encourage you to go check Twitter, check YouTube, and see what the
It's
Alabama Auburn finish
everywhere.
is.
If you're watching this
Yeah,
video, chances are you've already seen it.
exactly. But the thing is, like he made mistakes, but he also was able to recover from it. I thought that's the Peyton Thorne. I thought he played well. I mean, he missed some throws early. He was settling in. He did not have protection in those throws, but when he had time, they schemed up. I mean, Hugh Freeze did an incredible job
Yes.
on
Like,
six completions. On six completion, I'm sorry, six total, but 5 completions for Peyton Thorne. He maximized all of them.
yeah.
Hugh Freeze did, and I thought this was such a credit to him. They ran the ball effectively, even though Bama knew they were one dimensional. And then, like, I thought Peyton Thorne ran the ball well. He ran the ball physically. I thought he moved bodies when he was running. He wasn't just falling down. He wasn't sliding. Like, he wanted to win that football game. And you leave Auburn and Hugh Freeze, especially Hugh Freeze, in games long enough. At Jordan Hare, like, weird things can happen. And obviously, Bama ended up surviving, I guess is the right term, or slipping one away from Auburn. But yeah, this was an incredible game, start to finish.
Yeah. I think this is kind of a preview. I think Bama fans are relieved, but I think it's going to start turning quickly into a bit of paranoia because Auburn, look, as they get more talented, those games are going to be losses for sure.
The margins will be thinner.
Hugh Freeze, we know him as the Bama killer. That's what he is.
You hated him at Ole Miss. Now imagine having to play him at Jordan Hare with talented roster.
Yes. And a quarterback that doesn't stink.
Yeah, but who? I mean, Walker White. It's a Walker White. Is it the quarterback for him? That's the guy coming in, the young guy. But
Yeah, they'll find something in the transfer portal, maybe. I don't know.
they try. Peyton Thorne was that. I'm sure Hugh Freeze will find somebody. Regardless, though, like,
Yeah, maybe
does this
Caden
worry?
Salter. I don't know. The old
He's a
Liberty
dog.
guy. He's a dog.
Does this worry you for Bama going to Georgia? Like, do you feel differently about their chances? No, like obviously this is the last 6 games of the year, or prior 6 games leading up to this game. It's been a much different Bama team, right? They've ran the ball. Jalen Rose played really good. Their defense has locked down teams. Does this like scare you at all, or is this like, no, this is Auburn, this is Iron Bowl. Who cares? It's rivalry week. Chalk it up. This will be a brand new Bama team for next week.
Yeah, I don't care. I don't care. I mean, if you remember the last time, like Bama had a sweat at Jordan Air with Bryce Young as their quarterback, needing a last minute drive, going on to win the game against a not great Auburn team.
Yep.
Uh, they ended up blowing out Georgia in the SEC championship. So I don't feel any differently about Alabama. This is again one of those special instances where I know people talk about Ohio State Michigan is the best rivalry in football because of the magnitude of that game, sure, but like this game is different when it's played at Jordan Air. Like it is guaranteed to be a classic when it is played at Jordan Air. We've seen it
Yeah.
over and over and over and over again. It's a
Yeah.
special rivalry.
They haven't won 2 straight at Jordan Hare in a long time. And the thing is like, to me, I feel somewhere in the middle. It's like, yes, you beat Auburn in Jordan Hare. That's a win in itself, right? Like, throw everything else out the window. You got to win against Auburn. You survive in advance. You can breathe now. But the second thing is like, where I kind of get my hesitancy is like, it just reminded me that there are flaws with this Bama team that were exposed
Where
early in
though?
the season. We're talking about penalty wise, right? We've seen that
Yep.
before in big games. We're talking about sustaining drives, right, and finishing in the red zone. And then we're also talking about giving up explosive plays in their in secondary, but also defensively, like in general, right? So that's what concerned me. And like, yes, it didn't bite him against Auburn. The thing is Bama's talented enough and well coached enough to like play an elite game and beat Georgia. Absolutely. But at the same time, like if they don't, like Georgia will expose these flaws and then some, and it could get ugly, you know. So that's where it's like they can still beat Georgia, no doubt about that. Same time, it's like, oh yeah, like this is not a flaw. This is a flawed Alabama football team. But by the way, every other team in the country is flawed, right? Like there is no perfect team this year, for the most part. Like, you know,
Yeah, I think Georgia and Michigan's the closest thing we have to that, you know.
well,
But
and when you're getting to this caliber level of teams, like these teams, like you're nitpicking, right? Like when you say flawed, like these flaws are very nitpicky, but they're also the margins of an NCC championship game, an Ohio State Michigan game, a college football playoff game. Like that, those are the margins. That's how you win, in these big games.
Yeah. Let's talk about BYU, Oklahoma State. Mike Gundy classic.
Hey, we
I
do feel
mean,
bad for Kitani Sakai.
no, we don't.
Wow, I do. BYU balled out in their first year in the Big 12 without a quarterback for a couple of those games at the end there. Like they balled out, man. They balled out.
I mean,
They
they
gave
really couldn't.
Oklahoma and Oklahoma State scares. The second and third team in the Big 12. They gave them real scares.
I know they picked on the bottom of the Big 12. They're able to get that right, and then they got an out of conference win against Arkansas, which turned out to be not a very good win. So I don't know. I don't look. All I'll say is Mike
You could
Gundy is awesome. Oklahoma State, the preseason 30-1 Oklahoma State conference championship, Big 12 dark horse is still alive for me.
never a doubt, right? Never a doubt.
Never
I
doubts.
remember I remember begging you to just hedge on BYU. Just begging you. Hey,
Oh gosh,
hedge BYU. And as soon as they're up, what was it, 24-6 or right?
they're
Like,
down 18.
yeah, 24-6 in that first half. And it's like, you should have hedged. I told you, I was like, we should have hedged. And then never doubt Mike Gundy, man. Never
And
doubt. That's when you double down. That's exactly when you double
yeah,
down.
and Alan Bowman showing up and showing out, and then Ollie Gordon. I mean, just fourth quarter, Ollie Gordon is the best player in college football. You cannot do anything when you're tired and you're bending over and you're panting. You cannot get a good tackle on this guy. He's
No,
unbelievable. 5 touchdowns in this game, almost 200 rushing yards. He's electric. He had, I think, his career high in carries this game for good reason. The weather wasn't too great there. I cannot believe BYU made that field goal at the end of regular. I thought we were because this game went to overtime because Oklahoma State missed an extra point. BYU went down the field and kicked a 52-yard field goal in terrible weather as a college kicker. And I'm like, well, that's crazy. And then Oklahoma State missed the 2-point conversion in the second overtime. And I'm like, oh no. And then, of course, you get a strip fumble, recover it. They reviewed it for like 5 minutes for some reason. So the celebration was short. And then the celebration got long. So Oklahoma State was scoring off against Texas in the Big 12 championship. That's the main reason we want to talk about this game. And it was a great game. So that was awesome. That was awesome. Let's talk about Northwestern Illinois. Let's talk about Northwestern winning 7 games this year.
Coach of
What
the
the
year.
hell? What
Coach
the
of the
hell?
year.
I did not watch this game at all. I'll be candid. Did not watch this game. But box score scouting, John Paddock looked like he was slinging the ball around the yard. Too bad he's out of eligibility. Would have loved to see that guy come back in an orange jersey next year. But yeah, David Braun. I mean, unbelievable, dude. Unbelievable. Like again, and you brought this point up to me earlier. It's like, and people are wrong to be pissed at Dion for not making a bowl game. Like people are wrong, right? Like Deion Sanders, it is hard to turn around a team that wins one game at the talent level that they were at and go bowling. That's it. You're asking near impossible, right? And they did as best they could. They started 4-0 and then depth caught up to them. Northwestern was in the same position. They won one game last year. Granted, the Big Ten West is the worst division in Power 5 football, but you won 7 games. You beat Minnesota. You beat Illinois. You almost beat Iowa. You killed UTEP. Like now UTEP's not good, but like the way that they did that, it looked good. So I cannot express how impressed that I am with this Northwestern team. You're looking at a guy who looked at that over under 3.5 wins, and I was like, what are we doing here? Like, you're asking the impossible. And then Pat Fitzgerald, the whole thing happened, which, people are throwing around his name potentially for Duke, but might be a little too soon for that. I don't know. We don't have to talk about that, but just so freaking impressive from David Braun. And it is exactly the right thing to do to go turn around and hire this guy. Because if not, someone else is. AK
So,
Indiana,
yeah. Oh God,
like
yeah. Well, Syracuse. I do think like
Syracuse.
that's not a shot at Dion, by the way. When we say like yeah, like that, this is a pro David, like David Braun, right?
Yep.
Yeah, David Braun. This is just showing how impressive what he did actually was. They went 7-5. Ben Bryant, a guy that was kind of pushed out of Cincinnati, and guess what? They lost 4 draft picks, right? They had a first round pick, Peter Skronsky. They had a fourth round pick, Adewema. Wow.
Atabore.
Adebawore.
Is that what it
Adebore.
Atabore?
Yeah, my apologies there. Yep. Um, and then
Cam
like Cam
Mitchell?
Mitchell and Evan Hull, right? Like those are like 4 guys that were impact players on your team.
NFL players.
And
NFL
you turn around
players.
and to the portal, you lose Malik Washington to Virginia, who is literally a monster, who is like ACC leader in fantasy wide
Number
receivers.
2 fantasy wide receiver in college fantasy football. If you play college fantasy football, number 2 wide receiver overall, behind only Malik Neighbors. Better than
Yeah,
Marvin Henderson Jr. Now, is he that talented? And did he benefit a lot from volume? Yes, but he's also a good blocker. He does a lot for you. Special teams, like he does a
they
lot
could
for
have
you.
used him on Northwestern, absolutely, and they still went 7-5 with Bryce Kurtz and Cam Johnson. I mean, it was awesome. It was really awesome. I could not have been more happy from Northwestern. Not only did they beat Illinois, not only did they go 7-5, but they also beat Illinois, preventing them from being bowl eligible and letting Minnesota sneak in at 5-7 to the bowl games. That didn't really matter, but regardless,
It did
that's just kind
matter.
of funny. It matters to be. Oh, it matters to us. Absolutely, it matters to those players that get 14 more practices. It matters to the money that Big Ten brings in, specifically in Minnesota, and like the fans get another place to go to. We'll probably end up in Detroit, and that kind of sucks. Go from one cold weather town to another.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, enough about Northwestern. As much as I love Northwestern, let's talk about West Virginia. Let's talk about Neil Brown. Let's talk about Garrett Green. Let's talk about Jaheim White. Are you kidding me? Jaheim
another
White. Now, okay, you're a big
that
CJ
was a
Donaldson
crazy
fan.
ending. That was a crazy
It
ending.
was a crazy ending. But I'm gonna spotlight Garrett Green and Jaheim White, and I'm gonna let you talk about the game, right? Jaheim White on the season is averaging like 8 yards a carry. That is stupid. He is a true freshman. He is all 5'7", 192. Dude is a bowling ball. Dude is a bowling ball, but he is explosive. He is a hard runner. He's going to be an crazy. And CJ Donaldson is a very, very good running back, H back, whatever you want to call. He does everything, right? He's very, very good. I mean, the dude has like CJ Donaldson on the year has like an absurd amount of touchdowns. I don't know the number from. He's got 11 rushing touchdowns, more receiving touchdowns. James White is a dude, man. It is a dude. It was confirmed in this game. Now Baylor's been pretty tough. And before we get into West Virginia, like in the outcome of this game, you can talk about the game. Baylor, Jeff Grimes has been fired as the offensive coordinator. A guy that was getting looks to be the offensive coordinator at schools like A&M last year. He's out. Dave Aranda has flipped to calling plays now.
Defensively.
Defensively. Sorry. Yep. Thank you for the clarification there. There's no more fingers to point. There's no more fingers to point to. Dave Aranda, I mean, look, if his seat wasn't already hot, right, he still might get fired. I don't know what that administration is going to do. I
Well,
would have thought
so
that it had been already done by now, but
so they did announce that they are bringing him back. That's when the news about, but it was bringing him back, but you got to make wholesale changes. And like the reason why they brought him back is because they had a ton of freshmen playing. They had injuries at quarterback positions, and this season obviously did not go the way they wanted to. But they didn't bend down, didn't fall over. They competed in some games down the stretch in the Big 12, kind of. But the thing is, like, next year will be his year. He's going to make changes offensively with Jeff Grimes, and obviously, defensively, he's calling plays. I do think the future is going to be better in 2024. I don't know how much better and how much better does it have to be to keep his job. But regardless, though, I think he knows and they know like
it's a
2023 is
bowl game.
unacceptable.
It's bowl game or bust for him. I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, 6-6 would
Can't be
kind of
losing
be
to
disappointing.
can't be losing to GJ Kin in Texas State. Can't be doing that.
No. And you had a chance to beat Utah. You had a chance to beat Houston. I mean,
Houston,
you had a chance to
you had a
beat
chance
West
to beat West
Virginia. Like
Virginia.
that's the thing is I took their over under this year because they lost some close games last year in 2022, and I was expecting that to change in this year. And obviously, they took a step back and then some. But this is the same coach that took them. This took Baylor, right? This is not University of Texas. This is not right? Like Oklahoma. This is Baylor. Love Baylor as a program, but they are not like an elite level where they can just reload and replenish. 2 years ago, they were in the Big 12 and they won the Sugar Bowl. Like they were the class of the Big 12 for a season, and they're not that far away removed from that. He can get them back there. Does he have the time to do it though? He didn't just forget how to coach. They just whatever he's been doing is not working. And the transfer portal is part of it. He's figuring that out. And but it's you mentioned though, it's bowl game or bust, and I think even and then some.
Yeah, I agree. Let's move on to Sun Belt. App State winning 55, Georgia Southern 27. App State clinching a spot in the Sun Belt Conference Championship. They will be playing against Troy. That line opened, I believe, at 6.5. Georgia Southern, 4-game skid to end the year after starting 6-2. A team that we thought had they controlled their own destiny. Once then things started to fall off the rails once they played James Madison. They lost that game, came back, won 2 games, but then they kind of got outplayed in every single game by a good margin. Their defense just looked terrible in those games. And App State is the opposite. They started 3-4 on the year, and they end 8-4 with 5 straight wins, including a win against James Madison. So if you think Troy has that game locked up, look now, Troy's been playing great football. Gunnar Watson's playing better football than he has his entire career. Kamani Vidal is also a fantastic player as well. I mean, they got a good squad over there in Troy. Their defense, John Summerall's got the boys buzzing. He might have been a little distracted there when he saw Mark Stoops, you know, get hired at A&M for about 15 minutes. He might have got a little distraction there, but he's locked back in. So this is I didn't get to watch this game, but good for App State, man. They were on legit. I don't know you want to call it quit watch, but they were on legit because the expectation of App State, which is crazy it's bowl game, right? And there was a good chance they were not going to make a bowl game when you were looking at the rest of their schedule when they were 3
They
and
had a
4.
tough schedule.
And then they win all of them. And they win all of them.
Yeah, including James Madison. Also, I do want to say Sean Clark, we should know better than that to just count him out. Like a lot of people did. And Sunbelt was like, okay, if James Madison's bowl eligible, fine. But Coastal Carolina's playing well right now. Old Dominion, they're kind of sneaky, but it was like Georgia Southern, Georgia State, all these teams ahead of App State. And it's like, who's going to play Troy? And
yeah,
App State was not one of them. And
Sean Clark is a name to look out for the Duke job. I'd say Syracuse job. I don't know. I think he's a little bit under the radar.
He also just loves App State though. He just loves App State.
He
so
does.
I don't think I would be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if he left, but I also would not be surprised if he stayed and turned down some, quote unquote better jobs because he loves App State. App State's a good job. The Sun Belt's a good program, a good conference. It's only getting better. And
yeah, no. Well,
especially with the coaches in there.
It's easier to make the decision to stay. I mean, so Sean Clark is an alum of App State, if you didn't know as a listener. But look, Jonathan Smith left Oregon State to go to Michigan State. Mike Riley did the same thing at Oregon State. He didn't go to Oregon State, but he grew up in Corvallis.
It's a little bit different though.
He went to Nebraska. I mean, is it that different though?
Well,
you would be getting a significantly better job.
I think Jonathan Smith, he kind of had to get it like that. When your program, the future of your program is just such in question and so out of your control because of failure of Pac-12 commissioner and all this other stuff. And just you have no idea what's going on. How can you recruit? How can you do all these things that you should normally be able to do and that you have been able to do at Oregon State, which place that most people haven't been able to do these things. And now it's like, okay, now we got to restart and figure it all out again. And it's like, okay, well, let me just go to where a place where resources are at Michigan State, where the money is, right? And then the ability, the long-term longevity of your program is not a question mark. The Big Ten is here to stay. And the other part, like Pac-12 and Oregon State, who knew?
Yeah. And okay. So for Georgia Southern, their future's still pretty bright, right? Those receivers.
Bowl game.
Yeah, bowl game. Look, those receivers will be back. They'll be good. I believe Davis Brin is out of eligibility. He might have one more year. He might have a COVID year. He might
check on that.
I don't know. But if you can get him back, that'd be really nice. Just a little continuity in that offense there.
He'll probably have to
but
apply for a waiver, it looks like, because it'll be technically his,
his 6th year. But like
his
his
seventh
first 2 years,
year.
like were those red shirts? I don't even know. I don't even know.
Well, that's why he'll probably have to apply for a waiver.
It'll be his like 5th year, right? I thought. Or did
Well, he
he
started in 2018. And so 2018,
just
2019,
2024 would be his
2020.
6th year? I don't know. I don't know. Georgia
Oh,
Southern
maybe you're
fans, let
right.
us know. I mean, I don't know. I don't follow Davis Brin close enough to know if this is his last year of eligibility or how his redshirt situation is looking. But
It would be his seventh year, but I think he can still do it.
I mean, you can do anything these days, right? I mean,
Yeah, for real.
so Florida State 24, Florida 15. Max Brown, Billy Napier, man. Just this just it was it the third straight losing season for Florida. First time in like 70 years. That's pretty brutal. That's pretty brutal. And look, Florida went up. They're up at half. Felt like, oh, maybe this has got a shot, but it just Florida State was a better team. I don't know that Florida did a great job preparing these boys for this game. Max Brown, of course, struggled, which we kind of expected, right? We didn't expect him to necessarily ball out, right? But in the swamp, I saw this as a potential spot for Florida to straight up win this game. But
Well, I thought they scripted plays well for Max Brown, and you knew it was going to be hard because you had injuries on the O line, and the D line for Florida State's pretty darn good. Jared Verse had a day. Obviously, you have a backup quarterback. They scripted plays well. They started off strong, and they just could not maintain. And the problem is like there was a legit talent gap, and like I get it, it's year two of Billy Napier, but at the same time, like it cannot be easy for Florida fans to be watching this game and be like, there is a talent gap with Florida and Florida State. That has to be frustrating. That has to be frustrating. And I get it. 2024 is the year for them in terms of getting that recruiting class in, another round of transfers, yada, yada, yada.
they have a
But that
tough
schedule,
schedule next year. Tough.
awful. It is awful. They could go 5-7 and upset some really good teams. The problem is you look back in their schedule and like to me, this loss is not why I get upset with Florida. I think you had a real chance to beat Missouri last week, right? Which would have been a huge win. You had a real chance to beat Florida State as well. Huge, like that would be back to back top 10 wins, huge wins. Obviously, you don't win them, you're not favored. Fine, whatever. That Arkansas game as circle. Arkansas has been dead in the water against just about everybody else in the SEC, and they looked competent against you guys at home. They beat you in the swamp, and that can't happen, right? In year two, you're hoping to see growth. You're hoping to see not the same mistakes happening, dumb penalties, right? Some guy spitting on a Florida State guy, like that can't happen in year two.
Yeah.
Like there needs to be a progression on the field. I get it, recruiting wise, you're doing a really good job. But Billy Napier is a guy that was supposed to bring in culture, staff, and coaching into this place here, and it just hasn't happened, right? Like it hasn't happened yet. And obviously, I don't want to pull the plug too early on him. I don't want to ever like insinuate someone like has to get fired. And I don't think that's the case here. I do think he needs some more time to get it right here. But at the same time, like at a program like Florida, you have a smaller leash than other programs. We talked about this back in the summer with Jake Dickert and Billy Napier, right? Both second year guys. Jake Dickert had after a hot start, they finished brutally. They finished 5-7 too. At the same time, like Jake Dicker's not on the hot seat. Jake Dicker's not being, you know, berated by his fans like Billy Napier is. There's a different expectation at Florida than there is at most other schools. Fair or not fair? That's what you signed up for.
Yeah, you signed up for it. I mean, that's what it is. So I'm sure
And he
LSU
knows it too. Like
fans,
he's been in the SEC. He understands exactly what he has to do, the expectation. Sorry.
yeah, I'm sure LSU fans are uh, laughing right now. It's not over for Billy Napier. I don't think. I don't think it should be over for Billy Napier, but boy, he is in an absolute pickle if I've ever seen one. This recruiting class is starting to not fall apart, but it's not looking as good as it was a couple weeks ago. And
Getting plucked a little bit.
getting plucked. Might have to do some work in the transfer portal there for sure.
Definitely
And
gonna have
just
to.
and hold on to those guys. So, but
But if you can keep Graham Mertz, you can keep some other players like ETN's a good nice piece.
Pearsall,
Pearsall, I believe he comes back if he wants to. Yeah, there's there's building blocks here. Obviously, you don't make a bowl game for what I guess
Yeah,
not good.
Georgia Tech. Georgia 31, Georgia Tech 23. I mean, this game, Georgia dominated. Like, they were in control of this game, right? So don't be fooled by the score. I more so wanted to talk about Georgia Tech than I wanted to talk about Georgia because we know Georgia, they went out there in the playoffs. Yeah, they're a really good team, whatever. Uh, but how do you feel about Brent Key right now?
Did they look other than Boston College, which that game was unbelievably frustrating? And I guess you'll throw the Bowling Green in there. Fine, whatever. But to me, they never looked like extremely outclassed in any of these games they played in.
Nope.
They play with speed. They play physical. They play hard. Haynes King is kind of frisky. They got Singleton, who I love as a freshman. Dante Smith runs hard. They've got some nice schemes offensively. I do love their zone running. I love their stretch plays outside. I think it's so nice. The one cut and go for Smith. They're a frisky team. They really are. And like to me, like there was one team that I would have bet like if I had to like pick one money line, it would have been Georgia this week. Obviously, for obvious reasons, huge spread, whatever. Georgia's significantly more talented than Georgia Tech, but like Georgia Tech, this does not surprise me that this game was a little bit closer than the spread would have indicated. I know it got close late, but at the same time, like Georgia Tech was in this game in the first half. You know, the second and third quarter, middle eight kind of got away from them a little bit, but they fought back and they're frisky, man. They're frisky. I can't wait for the bowl game. They went 5-3 conference. 5-3.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is a half decent ball club. And I'll give you this. The schedule next year, I think they could make a bowl game again. I'm not going to lie. So they get Florida State in Dublin, Ireland. Let's remember Florida State, like as much as we love to talk about Mike Norvell, I'm sure they'll do great in the transfer portal, but they lose a ton this year. They lose a ton this year to the NFL. A ton. So we'll see
Mm-hmm.
how that is. And it's the first game of the season, and it's an international game. You just don't know how those are going to go. Georgia State, VMI. You get Duke at home without Mike Elko. You get Miami uh, at home. You get NC State at home. They lose a lot of seniors on that defense. Then you play at North Carolina without Drake May, Syracuse, Virginia Tech. That's a lot of potential winnable, also losable games. But like 6 wins
It's
not
not
out of the
nothing that's
question.
like something that's like, oh, we can't win this game. And with your talent level you have, and I assume it'll only get a little bit better, right? Marginally. It doesn't have to be a huge jump, but I assume it will get better year one to year two. We've talked about this, right? There will be a jump. It's not crazy to think about it. I mean, we saw Virginia Tech right now. Like it's not like insane to think like, hey, can be a realistic expectation for us to take the same jump in progression that Brent Pry did Virginia Tech, and now it's Brent Key's turn to do with Georgia Tech.
Yeah. Now you also play Georgia Notre Dame as part of your out of conference next year.
But
Georgia
at the
wins. So
same
that's
time, though, like they beat North Carolina, right? They beat Miami somehow.
well, let's not get ahead of
They
ourselves. All
hung
right. Let's see how they do in the transfer portal. Let's
well,
see what kind of
obviously.
hires. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. Uh, Iowa, Nebraska. We'll briefly talk about this game because this game was hilarious. Live bet the under. Live bet Iowa money line. It was a lock. This is the most Iowa ending ever. If you didn't watch this game, I'm sorry because this fourth quarter was incredible. Deacon Hill
It
has the
really
ball.
was.
Deacon Hill has the ball. It's tied 10-10. What does Deacon Hill do? He throws a pick. That was basically a punt. And you're like, oh boy, there goes Deacon Hill, Deacon Hilling. But then guess what? What, 2 plays later, 1 play later? Interception. Purdy throws an interception back to Iowa, who basically gained 25 yards from a Deacon Hill interception in the most Iowa way possible. And then they literally just like ran the ball. They didn't even like try to like score or like gain a ton of yards. They just relied on their kicker to make a big time kick, and they did. They had one big run. I think Keegan Johnson had a nice run. Is that his name? Oh, Caleb Johnson. Sorry.
LaShawn Williams actually had the run.
He had the run. Okay. And
Yeah.
then they kicked the field goal. They won the game 13-10. The total was 25.5 or whatever, or 26.5, whatever it was. That's unbelievable that it went under. That's awesome. Iowa going 10-2. They failed to average 250 yards offensively. The most wins that any other program has ever had while having that stat under 250 yards on offense is 4. And Iowa won 10 games.
Oh my God.
That's a record that will never be broken, by the way, unless it's broken next year. But Brian Ferentz is out of there, so.
Oh my God.
But yeah, Nebraska. I mean, you say it all the time. Same shit, different toilet. But I believe in that
Yeah,
rule. This is different.
it is. It's just the leftover shit from
Yeah,
from fucking Scott Frost. That's what it is. And Nebraska, I know it's frustrating. You were 5-3, I do believe, right? Where you were staring down a bowl game, and you didn't. Michigan State somehow beat you, and Maryland somehow beat you, Wisconsin beat you in OT, and then Iowa as well at the end there. Like it's frustrating, but at the same time, like this does not feel like Scott Frost, Nebraska. This feels like progress has been made. Like they got better as the season went on. I know you didn't
this
finish
is a
strong.
young team too. A young team. True freshman
That
starting at
also
receiver, defensive line, secondary. I mean,
you also had no quarterback. You had no quarterback all year.
Jeff Sims was not the
Like
dude.
like Harburg was your most productive, kind of, but like no,
Yeah, I
they'll
mean, there's some
figure it out
decent
there.
quarterbacks in the transfer portal already. I mean, you got Will Rogers, you got
Max
Max
Johnson.
Johnson. So I mean, I don't know where any of those guys are going to end up, but I would imagine that Nebraska dips their toe in the transfer portal market for that.
Well, and
Uh,
that's a good spot to be at. That's a good spot for a transfer quarterback to come into with the young wide receivers, with Matt Rule in there. Like
yeah,
you got some
as long
talent
as
there.
they
They
get
got a
in the
nice O
spring,
line. Yeah.
yeah. Let's talk about the Egg Bowl. This was just 3-0 at halftime. Classic. Uh, I do love that Lane Kiffin post game brought up. Now, look, on record, I'm not the biggest Lane Kiffin fan. All right. But I love the fact that he brought up Mike Leach. You know, he missed seeing Mike Leach on the other sidelines. I thought that was awesome. I thought that was awesome. Uh, in general, Ole Miss did dominate this game, though. Mississippi State had no chance of moving the football, even against a terrible Ole Miss defense. And they win this game. They finished the season 10-2, once again, overachieving with Lane Kiffin. Mississippi State falls uh, ineligible of a bowl game at 5-7. Zach Arnett is out. And it looks like Jeff Lebby is the hire for Mississippi State. And we can get more in depth than that, as we start actually like reviewing, the coaching carousel, giving grades and all that good stuff. But you see the tweet that Lane Kiffin sent out or whatever is like uh back to the sip or whatever. So I think Lane Kiffin, I think he's
There's
good
some
buddies with
beef
Jeff
there.
Levy. There's
I
some
do
beef.
I do not think they're really good friends from what I have
Really?
heard. I even though they were on the same staff, right? Levy was at Ole Miss before he was at Oklahoma, which is really interesting there. But I don't think they got along super well. I mean, Ole Miss loves a troll, so that's
I
part
think
of
Lane
it. But
Kiffin it sounded like a friendly kind of like jab, like, oh, hey, we're rivals now. Well, I'll see you on the field, in the Egg Bowl.
yeah,
So,
I hope so. But regardless, that's going to be a great and entertaining Egg Bowl no matter what. But I think this is what Mississippi State needed, right? Like Arnett, obviously not the guy, and I think we've seen it, right? The 80s know it. The path to success for Mississippi State is a creative offense. Dan Mullen had it, right? They had a lot of success there,
like
too
Leach
much
had it.
success there. Then most people know we had Mike Leach, obviously had it. And I think Levy, it remains to be seen how he can run a program, but I have no doubt that he's going to be able to have a successful offense and bring in some quarterbacks, some wide receivers, and, really spark that offense. And maybe it carries over to the rest of the team.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see what kind of staff he brings around. I have no idea what it's going to look like, but I do believe that this is probably, I'll call it a right hire because I think there are a bunch of right hires. Like there's no like soulmate. I think for Mississippi State with the state of the program where it's at, you could say a guy like Jamie Chadwell would be perfect. You could say a guy like Sean Lewis would be good. Now, granted, he doesn't have a ton of ties to the Southeast or that program, but I'm just, a little veer and shoot, never hurt anyone. I'm just saying, like, creative offenses. But I, I think this is a hire that people are not surprised by. It was a
This
name
makes
that kind of came up in my brain, but it wasn't like on my top tier list in terms of like looking at who Mississippi State was going to hire. But I'm not surprised in hindsight. Not
it's a
surprised.
very realistic, good hire for them. Now, will it work out? Who knows? But I think it's a really
I
good
have no
dart
clue.
throw, to dart to throw. Like,
Exactly.
and it's also like the program. The reality of Mississippi State is it is a bottom four program in the SEC that is getting bigger and better, right? With Texas and Oklahoma, so you're just adding more losses to your record.
Yeah. And look, an Ole Miss is a bottom five team in the SEC. But you can see the success if you do get the right hire and you have a creative play caller, have a creative offensive mind. And look, hopefully Jeff Levy can recruit some lads to the sit.
I will
So
say to that end, though, I will say that there is a big gap between 4 and 5. I think Ole Miss is a significantly better job than Mississippi State. But at the same time, like you look at Mississippi State's schedule for 2024, right? You've got some out of conference games that you feel pretty good about. You go into Arizona State. Who knows about, let's say, that program, how it's going to
that's
be.
a
I like
scary
Ken Dillingham.
game.
Who knows, though? For sure. Right. I love how they hosted Arizona this year. Now they're going back to Arizona State. Toledo, they're kind of frisky, especially if they're very frisky MAC team.
Daquan
And then you
Finn,
got
I'm pretty
a couple
sure
of
he has eligibility left. So I mean, I'm sure he'll
Penny
stay. Penny
Boone.
Boone, if he doesn't transfer out of there, they got some boys there.
But you're looking at your schedule. Like you don't get Kentucky, you don't get Vanderbilt. You have to play at Georgia, you get Arkansas. Okay, you get Florida. You got Missouri, A&M, Ole Miss, Tennessee, Texas. Like I don't. The problem with Mississippi State is you win your out of conference games, you win one game for sure you feel good about in the SEC, and you've got to get that second win and make a bowl game. That's a successful season for Mississippi State.
I agree. I agree. Thank you guys for tuning to like our whip around portion. If you're listening to Spotify, just a reminder, please give us a rating. Give us a little rating. And if you're on YouTube, if you like the video, like the content, just like the video, you know. Maybe throw us a subscription. We appreciate you guys. And let us know if we missed any games or if look, there won't be a whip around for next week, but for next year, there's gonna be plenty of whip arounds, right? So make sure you guys get ahead in time. Let us know what games you want us to cover on the whip around for that as well. We thank you guys.